So, Kathy, you are taking us through snack time today. We're going to have apple juice and cracker. No, not at all.
No, we're squeezing a few things out of the book written by Walter Isaacson, that we can apply to real estate.
Good.
Steve Jobs.
Really around Steve Jobs and his leadership and kind of the good and the bad, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Good. So why Steve Jobs? Of all of the leaders, of all of the people throughout history that were available for you to sort of base a training around and base a thought process around development around, why'd you pick Steve Jobs?
Well, I was watching a documentary on TV, and it had the 100 greatest inventions of the last century. So you can imagine counting down. You know, we went through, the jet engine, the steam engine, the elevator, the car, and number 3 was the transistor. That shocked me because number 2 is the light bulb, and number 1 was the wheel. And so when I thought about the transistor, I thought, oh my goodness, this is all about this new breakthrough that's been happening since the 70s. And so I thought, we are alive with a genius in our midst. And you know, when you get asked the question, if you could spend time with anybody, who would it be? And
Oprah. That's my answer every time. Because Oprah has access to everybody else. So if you get Oprah on your team, you can really, right?
You are a network. So, it might be Albert Einstein, it might be Benjamin Franklin, I don't know. But I thought since we were part of it, he was kind of around us and in our area, that it might be fine to see how such a young guy took something out of his garage that he created and turned it into the world's greatest company.
It is interesting to think about. You don't have the opportunity to spend time, pick the brain, and there's not as much documentation around the guy that invented the wheel, right?
Right.
So having the data that's available because of the era and age that we live in, the data, the learning, the videos, the written word, so much, there's just a lot of volume of information about the subject, so that's good.
Yeah, the book is really, really thick, and we could go on and on. It's hard to find just one little thing to pull out.
Right. It is a beefy book.
But one thing I was surprised about Steve Jobs is that he really cared about the human touch first.
Yeah.
He loved electronics, but what he really, really cared about was the human touch. And I just find that with our agents, when they do that, when they look at the person first and the relationship first and everything else after, then operating from that as a foundation, they have a better career.
Yeah, he was really passionate about that. You're right, that intersection between the business person would call it the consumer. He called it the human, right? The person using the technology as opposed to the technology using the person. And how do you make it communicate so that everyone can understand it as opposed to speaking in technology? Right. Yeah, there's a great intersection there between real estate and
the other thing I like about Steve Jobs, at least in the book, is he was totally transparent. Totally. The author said he had no control over the book. He didn't want to see anything in advance.
Probably because he'd never let him print it.
Well, yeah, because after they got started, he got real skittish. And said, ooh, maybe, because he was kind of short-tempered, abusive to people, fired a lot of people, always had the pot stirring and went through.
Yeah, he's a bit of a dichotomy. Yeah.
And then the last reason I like to work with him is because he transformed his flaws. So, yes, he did. He's willing to show them, to let them out. He said that he's done a lot of things he's not proud of, but he didn't have any skeletons in his closet that he wouldn't be allowed out.
Yeah.
So, and then with that, as you track through the whole book, which we won't do today, but you'll see how he did transform them.
Cool. So the I in iPhone, iTunes, iPad, iPod, I don't know what they're making next. The I in that stands for what?
Well, you know what? That's funny because no one knew. I called people at Apple. I asked them, everyone I knew. I couldn't figure it out. So I would get things like intelligent, integrity, internet, increase, invigorating, intense, independent, immersed, iconic, insightful, and interactive, just to name a few.
Right.
And in the training, I would ask people what did they think it stood for. And nobody really, really knew. But I think I found the answer in the book because that's what we want to talk. I think it's integrate. Because what really lifted Apple up out of the garage into the great company that it was is after he integrated everything into Apple II. So integration means that you bring different elements together to make whole, not to make a whole, but to make whole.
You said a-hole. That was awesome. That is our first curse word on the radio show. Mark it down. Cut the tape.
Oh, I knew it.
Stay tuned for our next Best Of show, where you'll get to hear Kathy say a-hole.
Oh, my gosh. No, oh, that sounded funny. Anyway, yeah, it wasn't like to make... Oh, forget it. We're moving on.
No, I know what you mean. There's difference. It's not the whole two halves make a whole. It's the completion.
Yes.
Yeah? The sense of completion.
Yes.
Yeah.
WHOL.
Yeah. That was just me trying to bring it back. Bring it back.
So you'll hear him talk a lot about connecting the dots, and that's what he would do, is he would stand in the presence of now and then look back into his history and connect the dots and then always build out of that. And that's, again, another form of integration.
Yeah, it's I've read the book as well, and one of the things I found interesting was the iTunes sort of experience, where he really believed that, and this is sort of to that sense of wholeness, if you could make it really easy for people to buy music, they wouldn't steal it.
Right.
Whereas if you made it really complicated to steal music, they wouldn't do it.
Right.
And if you could keep the price point, the barrier really low, and make it really, really simple, just make it hit the button, get the music, people would be willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting intuitive leap that he was able to make, sort of.
And he took that from Eichler.
Yeah.
Because Eichler built those houses that were inexpensive for the mainstream America to get into.
Yep.
They were simple and they were great.
Right.
And so that was his thing.
They are not inexpensive
simple,
anymore.
Cheap.
Now they're super expensive.
Well, no house is inexpensive anymore.
Right.
So.
So what do you see as the personal life effects of your business and life and vice versa? So how do those two things interplay?
Well, I've always known that. You can't say, hey, this is my business life, this is my personal life, this is what I do on Sundays. It's just your life, and it's just expression. And we really can't separate them because they're integrated. And so what happens is when you express all of those things together. And because Steve was so transparent in his flaws, he really laid it out how he was. And he had such a high need for control. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Right.
But he let go of all that. And he began to learn the lesson of letting the vision work through you instead of you trying to manipulate the vision. I think the main thing to get across is that he was adopted. And he was very open about this. And he was, not all people that are adopted feel this, but he felt abandoned.
Yeah.
And so not only was he abandoned by his bio parents, but he was given to a family that was going to have him, but when they found out he was a boy, they abandoned him again. So he talks about this in his speeches. So that you could see all through his life. And people that worked with him would always say they thought the reason why he was so angry all the time and kind of mean to people was that he was still feeling that abandonment from.
And sometimes that's the armor, right? So
yeah.
I see this sometimes with clients. When I was selling, I'd see these sort of really angry, a lot of energy that's coming to the situation that doesn't map to the situation, right? Like we're going to show property and there's an ugly house and they're just really angry that the house is ugly. Like, whoa, where's all this energy coming from? We got 3 more to look at.
Right.
Relax.
Right. So it was something about something else, never what it looked like.
Correct.
Yeah.
That can be their way of creating a line. Right. Let's keep our distance from each other, because if we don't get too close, then I can't be abandoned.
Right.
And you see that sometimes in the profession as you're managing through.
Well, and
escrow.
that's interesting, because then other people feel that that he abandoned them.
Right.
So in fact, he did father a child when he was 23, the same age that his father was, and then he did abandon that child at first.
Right.
Later on, he came back and made it whole again.
Right. Interesting. So. Core values of an organization, of our organization, how do they parallel or how are they similar to what Jobs built in Apple Computer?
Well, our core values are commitment, accountability, personal responsibility, and vision. And I think this little story that I'm going to tell about Steve really, pulls it all together. So shortly after the two Steves got together, they decided to start a company. And at the time, they were all hobbyists in garages. So it was just a bunch of geeks that would get together and they would find new things to do. And literally, it was in a garage. And then they decided to put together a company, just the two of them, and they had to come up with a name. So I didn't realize this at the time, but technology was kind of ominous, and people were it was coming out of the Pentagon from the military, and it was kind of like, so Steve wanted to, I don't think he knew he did this, but he called it Apple because he'd just come from working on an apple farm, and then what that did was take away some of the scare and the intimidation.
Who's afraid of an apple? Right.
And it's so American.
Right. Apple pie.
So what's interesting is when this came together, they built it, and then they were having like an open house, a presentation where they're going to present it. So Steve Wozniak presents it to this homebrew group, they called, and Bill Gates was in the audience, as a matter of fact. And then Steve Jobs stands up and said, well, you know, what do you think? What do you think about this machine? And everybody was unimpressed. I mean, they bombed. I mean, there was nothing. The whole audience left. They kind of made fun of him. But there was one person, his name was Paul Terrell, and he walked up and he gave the business card to Steve, and he said real casually, keep in touch. So think of a realtor being at an open house. You've done your best. Lots of people are coming through. Nothing's happening. You're not getting anything. Somebody just hands you a business card like, hey, if you get a chance. So the very next day, Steve shows up at his shop. He had a shop on El Camino Real called the Bite Shop. And he went in there and he talked him into buying 50 computers. And the fellow said, Paul Terrell said, okay, I'll buy them, but you have to have them in a certain way and kind of deliver here, and I need them in 30 days. So when Steve left, they had nothing.
Right.
So he had to try and find money. He got a loan from a friend for $5,000. He went to a bank, got declined. He went to Altari Computers, got declined. Everywhere he went, he got declined. But then he found one person who called Paul Terrell and said, hey, did you really order 25 computers or 50? Because if you did, then I'll back these guys. And he confirmed that he did. And so to get a hold of Paul Terrell to make sure that he could confirm the order, he was at a conference, and Steve Jobs paged him on the loudspeaker, told him it was an absolute emergency, and brought him out. So that's how that got going. And they did turn the house into a manufacturing plant in the garage, and they put together 30 or 50 computers and took them in, and all worked out really, really well. But I wondered, you know, follow through, who would be willing to call back a client the very next day out of that casual leaving the card, page him over the loudspeaker.
Right.
I'm not saying you should do that.
I am.
But it shows how much passion he had and how much.
I mean, it really is, it's a great example of commitment, right?
Yes.
It is.
Well, and to be turned down, can't do it. And he just kept pressing, till finally he put those two people together. And it was interesting because it was this customer, Paul Terrell, at the Bite Shop, that said what his customer needed.
Right.
And so Steve Jobs learned very early to be customer driven.
Yeah, yeah.
To listen to what they wanted because he would tell them.
Yeah. Good.
So in the back of his garage and in the extra room and on the dining room table of his house, I mean, grew the largest and most valuable company in the world.
That's right. Interesting. So there's a lot written about Steve Jobs, and some of it good, some of it bad. And you see this with a lot of entrepreneurs. There can be a really light side, this creative, conceptual genius. And then for many, there's a dark side.
Right.
And you see this with a lot of different entrepreneurs, and it's interesting. Sometimes you see this in the real estate profession as well. So, how do you see the difference between someone who makes it in real estate and someone who doesn't, and how do these two things interplay? Like why do so many real estate professionals not make it?
And you and I see this. We see a lot of people come in and a lot of people go out, and I think it has to do with emotional IQ. I think it has to do, can they withstand the emotions of what they're going through? So an example, again, of this is when Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs were coming together to form the company. Wozniak, they call him, was still working at Hewlett-Packard.
Right.
And Jobs wanted him to come on full time.
Yep.
So he enlisted a fellow to kind of come in and talk him into it. He was an engineer from Atari.
Yeah.
So he came in and he got his job done. He convinced Wozniak to come all the way over and to go full time and to get this little company started. And so the way it was broken up, the stock was 45% for Steve, 45% for the other Steve, and then this fellow that helped, he got 10%. So 11 days later, after he made the commitment, he went back to the county and filed a paper and withdrew. He said he just started seeing them spending money, and they were and he withdrew. So he came out of the partnership. He was afraid he'd get stuck with a lot of the liabilities, and he got paid back $800. It's in these minutes. If he would have kept his stake.
This is the guy that got Wozniak to leave, right? If he would have kept that 10%.
Right. Today, it would be worth $2.6 billion.
Dang.
So then when they interviewed him, he said, hey, I don't have any regrets. You know, I saw what was going on. I just didn't have the stomach for it. I just couldn't go for the ride, which is okay.
Yep.
Because real estate isn't for everybody. But it's the ones who can really manage the underpinnings to the business within themselves that can make the real difference. Yeah. And I think that's the defining thing. We're in a fear-based industry.
Sure.
We've got to learn. We're in a relationship business, so along with that comes all the
rejection. It's an 8th grade dance every day.
Yes.
Yeah. There's another component too. I think that there's a video that's one of my favorites. I play it a lot, and it's Steve Jobs talking about passion. I hope I'm not stealing any of your.
No. Okay, add to it.
He talks about the reason passion is so important in business is because most people, when they're faced with challenges and adversities in their professional life, especially entrepreneurs or independent contractors, when most human beings, when they're faced with a challenge, will quit.
Right.
And the reason they'll quit is because they're sane. They're normal. They're human. They're normal human beings. And people with real passion, they're insane. And they won't quit. They continue to push through those barriers to get what they want.
Yeah.
And that's why he deems passion as so important. And I see this in the real estate industry all the time. It's to me, it's anchored in and around the doing. And it's sort of that idea of commitment, where if you will just take action, you can get your unfair share of this business. The top producers that I know are consistently taking action every day. And if they've been working a farm for 10 years, they're still working that farm. And they haven't, it's not sexy. It's not unique. It's not new. They're just consistently taking action, where most people, because they're sane, would quit. But they are just, doggedly, almost boringly continuing to work every day in and on their business to get the result.
Right. And I keep thinking about that first time they presented Apple One, as they called it. I mean, no one was interested. That could have just shut them down forever. But, they didn't. They found that little thread, and they pulled it all the way through into this great company.
Big, giant idea and company. Yeah, interesting.
So
we're talking about commitment as a principle, and it's one of the core principles of the company. Why is that such a game changer? Why is commitment the one of the things that is so core and fundamental?
Well, I think when you really understand commitment, it is a real game changer. And I think, you just see it over and over again when you look at Steve. And here, when I started my seminars, I knew commitment. That's what I got. I couldn't find anything, any writings on it or anything. This was in the late 70s. But I only found this one, and it's by Sir Edmund Hillary. And it says, until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Now think about that. Until you're really, really committed, you always have an out. You can always go back. You can always, there's that exit. And he also said there's always ineffectiveness. And I know as a mountain climber, if we weren't committed to summit, we would burn 9 times as much energy just trying. But if we would really stay committed to the summit, which was really, really tough, then it would go on. And he said there's one elementary truth that, and this gets me through many a dark hour, and that is that once one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. Now that is huge.
Yeah.
So that means what he goes on to say is that there's a whole force that will align with you, and it will bring with you people that you need to meet. They'll be all in your favor, and they're unforeseen. So things you can't even think of that you're going to need will show up. And they also say that material assistance will come your way. So a lot of times people say, I'd be better in real estate if I had more money. Or I can't do it because of money. But it's not that. It's once you commit, it comes out of that. So, and then Goethe said, whatever you can do or dream, you can begin it. boldness has genius. So if we consider that, what Steve Jobs did, he put a dent in the universe. If he, and it was his boldness.
Yeah.
So everybody has a personal genius, and to find that personal genius, you have to be bold. You have to stand up there and say, yes, I'm a realtor. I'm in sales. I'm here to serve you. And he said that's how you get the magic, and to begin it now.
And there's a lot of examples in the book, and I mean, if you just do a quick Google on Steve Jobs' leadership style, there's a lot of examples about his committedness and his willingness to sort of push boundaries and and even step on toes or step on whole feet if that's what he needed to do.
Well, he was totally focused, and he gave the best definition for focus. He said, to be focused, you have to say no 1,000 times.
Right.
So you have to be willing to say that no.
Yeah.
The other thing that commitment does is it can transform your fear into a destiny. So fear is a constraining force, and commitment is a creative force. And so it is the antidote to counter fear.
One of the examples I've used for commitment, and yours are much more elegant than mine.
I wouldn't say that.
Well, you wait till I'm done. There was a Spanish sailor, captain, who landed, I believe it was in the Americas or somewhere this direction. And getting here was really hard for he and his crew. And the crew kept saying, look, let's restock and go back. I just want to go home. Let's restock and go back. I just want to go home. Let's restock and go back. I just want to go home. So the captain had an interesting solution to that problem. He burnt the boat. So that created commitment because there was no way back.
Yeah.
And it's something that I talk to our leadership team about sometimes is, sometimes you just got to burn the boat.
Yeah.
And you just got to say, look, I am where I am. And
Well, I know when we were mountain climbing, if we weren't committed to summit, you would get sick.
Right.
Because the only way, high altitude illness, the only way to handle it is to go back down.
Right.
So you had to keep your eye on that vision. Same thing, burn the boat.
Yep.
Same thing.
Burn the boat. Like I said, yours is, mine's a little more crude there. So what would you say is, of all the things that Steve Jobs and, there's always a big team behind any new creation, but Steve Jobs and his team, what's the best product, best design? What's the most
when
impactful?
you look at what he created, think of it, the iPhone, the iPad, what he did to music, what he did to digital printing, what happened with the movies. We've all seen Toy Story. Look at the impact. But I don't think it was this product. I don't know that, I can't say that was his best design. I think he gave away the process to integrate. I think the idea of bringing different elements together and making a whole impact on that is what he really did. And what I really think was his best design is that he didn't only do that with products, but he did that within himself. And every time he'd go back into his history and handle an old situation, he would come out with more creativity and develop a new product.
So that introspective, that inward focus on the
if you follow the line every time, like when Scully got into president and he got the boot, he got out, it put him in kind of a deep place, but look what he did. He came back, that's when he met his father and his mother, and then he came back and he created Next.
Wow. Interesting. So that introspective focus.
I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Because that's something you can give away to everybody, because we're not all going to be geniuses. We're not going to change the world. But if we can do something in our own realm where we can integrate something and then impact it with others, then I think that was his best design.
Total non-segue here, but I do think, the more we can be introspective, I think everyone has a personal genius. Everyone has something inside them that they are genius at. It's a gift that they're naturally just have a skill and a competency that the rest of the planet isn't naturally as good at. And the more introspective you are, the more searching of self you do, the more you're able to tap into that thing that becomes effortless and easy, and it's really in your core competency as a sort of a soul or human being on the planet. And then feathering that into business, which is what Steve Jobs did, right?
Exactly.
He took that core brilliance that he had and then just feathered it into products.
And even after Apple, he had enough money. He never had to go back to work again. But he always felt like there was something he had to express. There was always something. And the whole story of him going back and meeting his mother and finding out that he has a sister.
Right.
And what's interesting, too, is that, his biological parents did get married, and they had another daughter. And then the father abandoned that daughter, and that's why he never wanted to see his biological father again. But he went in. His father ran a restaurant that was close to Los Altos, and Steve Jobs went in there a lot. But they didn't know each other until after, near the time of his death. Yeah.
Wow.
So
all right, Kathy, this is all interesting, and I'm glad you read a cool book, but like, I'm just trying to pay some bills and trying to sell a doggone house. So what does all of this last 27 minutes have to do with me, Kathy Crouchow?
I'll tell you. Okay. And I don't really know, and sometimes I wonder myself, but in the training we have about 30 people, and we give them the opportunity to start the day with something, each one at a different time, to start with something they learned from the book and how they can apply it to Steve Jobs, and how they can take that and apply it to their own career. And it's amazing to me what they take out of the book and what they can apply. Most of the people that go through this process double their production, and it's really fun to do it in a group and to see it. But I think, what we've got to look at is, look, we're all human.
Yeah.
We all have human flaws. And he definitely had his, but he didn't try and hide them. At first he did.
Right.
But then, as he developed, he didn't. I mean, he was short-tempered. He was intolerant. He degraded people. He was really self-absorbed. And he was a radical perfectionist. And yet he was great.
Right.
And he was great because he was a humanitarian first and an entrepreneur second. And, what we say is that our agents really matter. They matter first. Results count. They're important, and I know us as an executive team, we try and keep the people first.
Yep.
The other thing I think that we can take out, and just to summarize some of the things, is that he was transparent and that he dropped his need to control, and he allowed the vision to work through him. And that's a really important thing for agents to get. Get the picture that you want, where you want to go. Get that vision, but you can't chase it. Once you kind of own it, like athletes will say, do everything you can for the game, but then the game's got to come to you.
Right.
When the vision comes to you and it works through you, then you do way more inspired than you can when you work out of your skill. And I think our realtors are really good about being open. I think they're really good about being transparent, and they're really, really always go for the truth.
Well, and that really helps create trust, and this is a trust sale, right?
Yep.
So the more we become comfortable with transparency, that's what really makes the consumer or individuals in your life go, okay, good.
Yeah.
Right?
And when your clients trust you, you can make mistakes.
Absolutely.
And they'll forgive you.
Every time.
And if there's not that trust, then you make a mistake and they're going to fire you.
Or, you don't make a mistake, but it's perceived as one, right? People get what they look for.
That's another way to look at it. That's
so
really good.
Because there's never a straight line in real estate. How to handle a deal, you could ask 3 top agents and get 3 very different answers.
That's right.
All right.
Right.
But none the same.
Right.
And so if you don't have the confidence and the courage to be transparent with your client, then that can really impact trust. And when trust is impacted, then they start to look for the mistake instead of look for how it's done right.
Right. And if you talk to the clients, they really want someone that asks them the tough questions.
Yeah.
And they really want someone that they feel can really represent them when they're not there in the transaction. So it's what they want as well.
It's really, when it's done well, it's a self-discovery process. You're helping the client self-discover what price they should offer for a home, or what would they do if they didn't sell.
Right.
And you're really comfortable and detached from wherever that conversation goes.
Well, and the whole buying process, real estate or whatever, always comes from an unconscious level. So we have to take the time, ask the tough questions, let our clients go through a process, and then that really does develop that trust. Yeah. That's so important.
So these universal principles that we've talked about, how do you apply them to day-to-day life in real estate? How does this work if I'm going to an open house or whatever?
Well, I think, the whole thing about staying focused, and being consumer-oriented. I mean, ask your consumer. They're going to tell us what the next step is. Don't think you have to always try and figure it out and be, the expert. But a lot of times to be humble and to ask the questions. I would say follow through. In business, if there is a breakdown, it's because somebody somewhere didn't follow through.
In life, if there's a breakdown.
Yeah. And I just think of him getting that, I mean, do you know how many business cards people give us?
Right.
But he just got that one little business card, and the next day he was in the office at in that store at 9 o'clock making the sale. So I think
there's a lot of stories about his sort of maniacal follow through.
Yes.
I mean, almost pathological, right?
Right.
I mean, he has a tremendous ability.
Well, he was very intense.
Yeah, really intense guy. Yeah, and intense around the next step in the process, whatever that next step was, and he wouldn't get distracted with step 10.
So if he made such a global impact, which we can all say that he did, then there's just one little thing everybody can take from that's going to fit them individually. So that's why I think his work is so important, and that what great time for us to be alive in the midst of a genius.
Yeah, we got to hang out with the guy that invented the wheel. Sort of.
Well, it was number 3. I mean, think of that.
Yeah.
Number 3, the light bulb, and then the wheel. There he was.
So you developed a class kind of around some of the, or a process, not really a class, a process around some of the principles that you learned through sort of your thoughts, deep thoughts on this. So share with us what I Produce is.
Well, it's just a year-long training, and we meet once a month, and it's very, very powerful. It's not so much the work I do; it's what happens to our agents when they're in there. They'll see that they can grow both personally and with business. So, I don't know. We're having a presentation at the Millennium Tower in San Francisco. That's 301 Mission. We're going to have lunch included. We're going to have some of the graduates be there, so you're all invited. Just let us know in advance so we have enough lunch for everyone. And there's plenty of people that you can talk to about this.
And so, they would email you if they wanted to get on the list?
Yes.
Okay. What's that email address?
Kathy.Allerton at bhghome.com.
Good. Kathy with a K.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they could just me.
Or
and
just
she
me.
can get that to me too.
And what we'll do is we'll push out this little blurb with the 2 email addresses for everyone that's listening. So we'll push this out to them so they can go ahead and get
thanks, Keith.
Get registered.
That sounds great.
Kathy, thanks for all you do for the company. We appreciate you so much.
I just love working with you, Keith.
Oh, thank you so much.
I think you're just awesome.
I appreciate it.
All righty.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, one more quick commercial. We do have a powerlifting workshop coming up on July 25th at Round Hill Country Club. This is from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and it's completely free. And Rich Casto and myself are spending the entire morning focused on nothing but helping agents refine, perhaps redefine or refine their ability to capture and win listings. In this current market environment, really in any market environment, one of the real estate axioms is listers last. The reason for that is a listing brings buyers right now, and you should be able to turn any listing you get into at least one more transaction. So it's critical to long-term success of any residential real estate professional. And Rich and I are going to spend an entire day doing nothing else other than digging in on how to make your listing presentation more powerful, more dynamic, and most importantly, help you win. Because in this business, when you're in second place, you get none of the money. So first place gets it all. Second place is just the first loser. And this is Rich and I's time to carve out for the company to help any and all of our agents win more listings. So I urge you to carve the time out on July 25th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., Round Hill Country Club. Okay. Speaking of doing more business and how to win, we have Bernie Myers with us from the Montclair office, and you want to talk to us about working with flipper clients.
Well, Keith, I already told you I don't like that term.
Oh, you don't like flipper? Right. You don't like dolphins, or what's your deal with that?
I love dolphins.
Oh.
Don't get me in trouble on that group.
Oh, right. Sorry. Tuna nets and all of that. Right. My bad. So what would you prefer to call it?
I like to call them rehabbers.
Okay. All right.
And there's a reason for that because, going and doing the open houses and seeing the after project once we've done everything.
Yeah.
People come in and people have so much knowledge nowadays.
Yep.
And they know what things, sold for in the past, how long it's taken you to rehab the property, not flip the property.
Right.
And they already come in with preconceived ideas that, we spent maybe $10,000, went to Home Depot, and this is 2 weeks later, we're asking for $300,000 more than we paid for it.
Right.
So that is kind of why I cringe a little bit when people come and say, well, is this a flip?
Right.
And then I explain this house has been remodeled. I use the term rehab.
Yeah.
And then kind of go in a little bit more detail in terms of what we've done.
All right.
property. So that's why
working with rehabber clients.
With rehabber clients.
Yeah, Kathy, get off of this slide before he goes crazy. So, dang, we're going to say flip all this whole time.
That's okay.
So why is house rehabbing not for everybody? I mean, I know why agents get interested in it. Oh, one deal turns into two every time. Investor clients or rehabber clients will buy multiple properties in a year, where the normal human being buys one every 7 to 10. So why wouldn't everybody want to work with a rehabber client?
Well, it's like just anything in our business. There's definitely fruit at the end of the rainbow.
Yep.
But to get to that, there's a lot of pitfalls.
It's a lot of dang rainbow.
There's a lot of ugh, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because
what's some of the ugh?
Well, some of the ugh is it's not like a traditional sort of transaction, because at the very beginning you're not going into a farm and looking at these beautiful houses and like, I'd love to list your beautiful house that you've definitely taken care of all these years.
Yeah.
In most cases, I'm finding something that no one has taken care of for a number of years.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times, I do tend to look at the nicer neighborhoods.
Yep.
Location, we'll go into that a little bit more in detail.
Sure. Okay.
That plays a very important role in looking for this type of property. But in many cases, you're going through properties that have not been cared for at all.
In a long time.
Yeah, and you have to really have a lot of vision.
Yeah.
A lot of vision.
A lot.
Because the last couple ones we've done, people like, oh my God, I can't believe you're even thinking about doing it.
Right.
So,
right.
But I love that challenge.
Yeah. Well, in my experience is the rehabber, not flipper, the rehabber client, they can be pretty demanding. There's when someone is purchasing a home that's going to be their home, there's an emotional attachment that can pull them through some problems, whereas your rehabber client is very willing to walk away most of the time. Really, you put in a spreadsheet, it spits it out, it either works or it doesn't.
Exactly.
I'm not in love with this house, I'm in love with the return. So it's a different dynamic. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And the groups that I work with, I have about 5 to 6 different clients that I work with on a regular basis. Everything's based on time frames too.
Yeah.
Because in most cases, we're doing multiple projects.
Right.
So, while one has been done, there are 2 or 3 more that are in the process of being worked on. And for them, it's all, you're talking about spreadsheets.
Yep.
It's got to make sense.
Yep.
It's got to make money. It's got to pencil. So for them, it's like, how long is it? 4 to 6 months? Anything longer than that really doesn't kind of work for them.
Yeah.
It's got to, it has to be sort of such of a time frame.
Or if the project's that big, then the returns need to be commensurate with the size and the risk profile. I've done some flips myself, or I'm sorry, I've done some rehabs myself. Dang it. All right. I'm going to donate $5 to the Children's Village for the rest of this show every time I say flip. Is that cool? Write it down. Keep the tally.
Can we get 5 for the other comment that was made earlier too?
No, starting now, I will give $5 to a charity every time I say that word that I'm not supposed to say. So, rehabber clients, they can be really demanding.
They can be really demanding, and what I'm starting to see though too is a lot of people are seeing the opportunity in terms of rehabbing properties, and a lot of folks who shouldn't be in it are trying to get in it. And also, too, I would warn a lot of agents to be very careful with your license. Protect your license. Because, there are people out there that just want to make a quick dollar.
Yes.
And they don't care about you. There's no loyalty in a lot of these cases. They just want to, who's going to give me the best, at the end of the day, that I can get the cheapest and do this, I'm going to use.
Yeah.
And, they don't really care. We have to work on certain guidelines and rules.
Right.
And you never want to jeopardize your license. And I've seen a lot of cases where that stuff is being offered that should not be offered.
Right.
And they put you in positions that you don't want to be put in.
Yep.
So you really have to, kind of see and have your eyes open before you get into something that can be really bad.
Now, one of the things I've seen agents who work with rehabber clients. I know. But see, I just knew how I had to get myself focused. I put some money on it, then I'm going to really lock that down.
Sure.
Is you got to write a lot of low offers.
Yes.
And those low offers aren't really well received all the time. I know we're going to get to how to strengthen them, but I'm curious, did you have any resistance psychologically to, sending some low balls out to some of your peer group, and how do you deal with that?
Well, that's just, that's going to be part of the game. You're going to get some people that, quite frankly, are going to hang up on you.
Right.
They're going to feel insulted.
Yep.
That's, once again, that's part of our business. We're going to get rejection. I don't take it personally.
Right.
That's just, It happens.
Yep.
So there's no magical ball I can say, hey, you do this and do that. No, I mean, I just write offers.
Yeah.
And, you just keep throwing them out there.
If you write enough, one of them will go.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And in a lot of cases, I've had people say, there's no way we'll ever work with this. You and your client. You get the phone call 2 weeks later.
Right. Are they still out there?
Interested?
Right.
So, yeah, it happens. You just got to be willing to,
But as a real estate professional, you've got to be comfortable with the reality of if you're going to work with rehabber clients, then you are going to need to be sending those offers out and make sure you are comfortable with that or don't work with them.
Exactly. Yeah. But you also have to have a relationship with your client.
Yes.
And let them know, hey, this could happen or this will happen.
Right.
Or maybe we wait. Because in a lot of cases, especially for homes that have been in families for long periods of time, even if they haven't been taken care of, there's a lot of emotional sentiment to that house.
Yeah.
Because people who have, born and raised in a house, their vision of that house is completely different than ours.
Yeah, or even if they may not have emotional attachment, but they just want to maximize, like this is their one shot. And so they want to maximize what they can get for it.
Exactly. In some of those cases, I will say, let's hold off before we write.
Right. Okay, good.
We don't want to be the bearer of the bad news.
So what qualities do you need to know about a potential? See, Kathy's trying to throw me off here by putting it in the question on the screen about a rehabber client.
Well, once again, is this a part-time gig for you? Are you doing this full-time, or is this kind of like a hobby? Because in many cases, I'm going to be
you're good.
I'm going to be calling a client and say, hey, we need to look at something today. And we need, and we'll go a bit further in this too, but do you have a team? When we go out there, we want to look at this thing because we have to figure out and work backwards.
Right.
How much is this probably going to get us, but how long is it going to take to, get the work done? How much is that work going to cost? And then what can we pay?
Right.
So, it sometimes being as a hobby or some sort of a trade where it's not your full-time thing, people don't have the time to give to that.
Right.
So it takes a while because I've been doing this for a while, and you start to learn. People will call you and say, "Hey, I understand that you work with flippers, and then I want to kind of just interview them." Right. And we'll sit down and talk, and I want to kind of get a feel for have they done this in the past? What's their knowledge on certain things?
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Good. And then as far as finding the house, right now, I'm curious. When you first started this, did you find the rehabber client first? Or did you go find the deal first and then attract the rehabber client?
It's funny. I think it just kind of happened all at once.
Right.
I happen to live and work in a location in the Oakland Hills. Okay. Oakland, Berkeley, and Piedmont. We have a lot of the homes were built,
40s, 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yeah, 20s, 30s, 40s. And people love those homes, and they love the detail, the original detail about those homes, but they would love to have some of the amenities that modern homes have.
Right, like air conditioning or whatever.
Air conditioning, but you'd be amazed. Some of those homes don't have master bedrooms.
Right.
They don't have open kitchens.
They certainly don't have master suites.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm in a location where I love looking at the older houses and seeing something that you don't see now, looking beyond the popcorn ceiling, looking beyond the small kitchen.
Yes.
Or
how can you remove a wall? Is this load bearing? How can I open this up?
The basement that hasn't been used forever. So,
yeah. Good. So I get asked all the time when I'm talking to agents who are interested in working with rehabber clients. And my advice is go out and scour and look for a deal because they will always, the people that do this for a living are always willing to take a look at a property. Exactly. And whoever brings it to them is the one they'll write with most of the time. And so go out and scour the country, build your own little spreadsheet or borrow. I've got one. If you want, you can email me. I'm sure you should share yours. Have some sort of evaluative tool and go and, take a look and try to find a property that you believe is a rehab candidate and then take that opportunity out into the rehabber marketplace and find someone that might be interested in writing an offer on it.
Exactly.
That's the best way, in my experience, to find that client base. Or sometimes you'll meet with people, but there's a lot of people who think they want to do this as a way to make money or as a way to have a career, but they really, truly don't have the risk tolerance to do it.
Exactly. It's funny. I actually get a ton of referrals from my clients.
Right.
Because a lot of the guys, they all know each other.
Right.
and they'll like, I've used Bernie, I've used so-and-so, and they'll refer you that way. And then, of course, you'll get the phone call after the property is sold. It's, hi, I'd like to talk to you.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Now,
a lot of word of mouth.
When it comes to the house itself, you've got some things listed here: location, price, how much, return. What's the most important piece to you or to your investors when you're evaluating what makes a house a candidate for a rehab or what makes a house not?
It's fun. Well, to answer this, two answers for that. For me, it's always going to be location.
Yeah.
Because as a realtor, you think location, location, location.
Yep.
Now, from the rehabber, sometimes they think price.
Yeah, spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now, I like, sometimes I will tell my clients, I said, you know what, you can get this for this much, but at the end of the day, it's only going to sell because of your location.
Yes.
Yeah. Location is going to be the driving point of anything. You can make the house as beautiful as possible, but if the location is not as a desirable area or desirable as you think it may be, you're not going to get that return on your investment.
And what I looked for, and a lot of the clients that I worked for when I was selling, was they didn't care as much about location, whether it was Crocker Highlands or East Oakland. They didn't care as much about that kind of location, but staying away from what I referred to as the fatal flaws. So is it on a very busy street? Does it have a very tiny yard? Is it a flat roof? So are there some of these things that can detract from the property that are locationally based that make it where it's going to be the last choice even if it's pretty? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, so location can mean a lot of different things.
Location can mean a lot of different things.
Good. Right. So now the offer writing part. So you've identified a property that you think is going to be good for a rehabber client. And you know that you're going to be coming in. Every time I say rehabber client now, Kathy Allerton snaps her fingers like she missed another $5. How about this, Kathy? If I make it all the way through without saying it again, I'll give $100.
Oh, I'll take you.
All right, good deal. So now you can be happy either way. Yeah. Win-win. So when you've identified a property, now price isn't going to be how your offer is going to stand out.
Exactly.
So how do you do the best you can to make it look as good as you can?
Well, what we'll do is, once again, we'll go out with the team. We'll usually have the contractor, we'll have maybe a designer, and we go out there and we pretty much, when you write a traditional offer, you'll ask for an 8, 7, 10-day inspection period for looking at the house.
Right.
We do it all in one day.
Got it.
So
before you write?
Before we write.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, we know a good idea of how much it's going to cost for us to rehab the property, how long it's going to take, and what is that dollar figure we need to reach to be profitable. So and I want to stress as much as possible is if you write an offer like I'm going to talk about, really have a buyer that knows what they're doing, that really has a team, because you can really get yourself in trouble. What we have done on some of my clients that have that team put together, we'll write a non-contingent offer. Got it. And we'll have a very short escrow period of time. And
what's very short mean?
So there's a couple of my clients, we could, if escrow allows us, we could close in 5 days. Right. Because you're talking about an all-cash transaction. It's just, if liens have to be paid or anything like that.
The title company is the one slowing it down.
Exactly. In most cases, I'll write an offer for a 5 to 7 day close of escrow. Yep. But we're waiting on title.
So you're sort of, I won't call it the standard offer because every investor is different in these situations, and their risk profile is different.
Exactly.
But when you're trying to be as aggressive as possible so that you can win, you would write 7-day all cash, like no appraisal, no inspection, completely non-contingent. Just say yes to this, and we back up the money truck.
Exactly. Basically, we're saying to the seller, you sign here, this is what you get.
This is a done deal.
This is a done deal.
Okay. And then, then the whole counter process ensues, right? Usually from there. Okay, good. So that's about as aggressive as you can get, and you've got everything from there to, maybe you've got an investor who's a little less of a risk profile. They may want a 3-day inspection just so they have time to make sure, or how does that?
Well, what I've done also, too, one of the things I forgot to add is I've done this enough now where I have a list of agents that I've worked with in the past. So I will also put like a resume on there where you can contact XYZ. And kind of get an idea of how this particular transaction.
Your deal's closed.
Exactly.
It's not just kicking tires. These guys are serious.
Exactly. Because kind of going back to the pitfalls of getting to this, there are a lot of people that are buying or getting into this business and do wholesales.
Yes.
So they'll tie a property up,
lock it up,
and then try to sell it to another investor.
Right.
So you really want to show that you've got a strong history of closing deals.
Yeah.
Because a lot of agents have been burned, and it's hard to go back to your seller and say, hey, I know I thought this was a done deal.
But it's not really
It's not really.
Yeah.
It's not really.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. So how do you show value to potential buyers who are not buying a property? So, this was on the market.
Exactly.
Now it's been 2 months. And you're $200,000 more than what they see on public record that you just bought it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I've been doing this for like the past year, and actually just yesterday, last Sunday, on one of our current rehabs in Crocker Highlands. Is
great neighborhood, by the way. One of my favorites.
I
did not. Yeah, love it. That's a great
didn't say
area.
flip, so I'm happy with you.
Yeah. See, and so is Kathy now because I'm about to lose $100 or give $100.
What we do after we've purchased the property, before we touch anything, we take a ton of pictures.
Yeah.
And the worse, the better.
So you show the befores and the afters.
Yes.
You go HGTV with it.
Exactly. Exactly. So when you come into one of my properties that have been rehabbed, you'll see a binder that says before pictures. And I love it on the open houses. That binder is being walked all across the room, the house.
Like, oh my goodness.
And that's what you get. Oh my goodness. Oh my God. Can you believe this?
How did you do that?
And once they have that binder and they go from room to standing on a deck that wasn't there before, or a backyard that you can see that there's a backyard,
that you'd actually want to spend some time in.
They stop saying that word flip.
Right.
They start believing me. They start saying, yeah, this house was really rehabbed.
Right.
They really get the idea that, some time was spent.
Because it's a real metamorphosis as opposed to paint.
Exactly. And that has probably been one of the best tools I've used. It just speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And you just I give them the binder and just let them go.
Right.
And they just, they're bringing other people in. Can you believe this? And and I'm just standing there.
Right.
And I'm not saying a word. And that they're selling the house for me.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest, things.
They will. Yeah. I had a different script that I used for that. It's very complex. When someone would call me and say, well, you guys just bought it and now it's $200,000, I'd say, so? That was it. That was my whole script. It was just so. Because you've consumed a lot of risk. Your investors have spent the money on the rehab. They don't know how much was spent on the rehab. No one has the eyes in. And anyone could do it if they want to. And as Kathy said, there's a convenience premium that everyone pays.
Exactly.
So, but I think yours is much more elegant and a way better way to do it. So what do you need to know about a potential rehabber client? As the agent, what's the back end of the deal? What's that piece?
Well, for me, I call the back end of the deal is, once you found the property, you identified the property, you've got your rehabber out there, you go through the whole process, which is the hardest part. Because as you mentioned, writing all the offers that sometimes are not well received.
Right.
And going through all the work and going through the UCK house and have to go through all that. It's only right that you want to get the back end, the sale after the rehab, because that's where you make the biggest bang for our dollar.
Right.
And you want to show to your client, hey, I found you this property. I know what this house is worth. And, by adding value, I also mean is go to the home shows. Be a part of the team. So when people come to the open house and say, do you have a financial stake? And I said, no, I don't, but we're part of a team.
Right.
And when we build this, we each have a part to play. And my part is to find the property, is to, add some ideas in terms of, what I would do, and we work all together. But at the end of the day, once it's ready to sell, that's where I come back into play.
Right.
And I'm going to sell you this property because I've been there from the beginning. I know what it used to look like, and I know what conveniences have been added to this house and what's going to make this house really pop.
Nice.
So you definitely want the back end because that's where the money is made. When I first started, doing this, they're like, well, my
sister's cousin's
uncle used
to date somebody who owned a dog that's in real estate.
And now, I still talk to those folks, but they're on the bottom of my list.
Right.
And now people know that if they want to work with me, I have to have both
the back
sides
end.
of the deal.
Yeah. Good. Great. So, Bernie, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate having you on the show today. And Kathy, thank you for being on the show. Kathy Harrington, thanks for running the show. All right, I just pulled out my wallet, and I made a promise and a commitment. So here's 20, 40, 60, 80, and then I got to go get another $20. But here is $80 for the charity.
Well, you want this for the Children's Village.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Yep. So, and I owe you 20 more. I'll run, pick up lunch, and get you another $20.
You're the best.
No, you are. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you so much.
And appreciate everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for next week's show. Go